Home renovations are expensive and they create a lot of waste. But the choices we make during a renovation, the materials, what we keep, what we tear out, will shape how we live for years and hopefully for decades. So how do you approach that responsibly? How do you make decisions that prioritize durability and sustainable sourcing without blowing your budget? That's what today's conversation is all about. Welcome to Sustainable in the Suburbs, a podcast for the eco-curious who want to live a greener life and are looking for a place to start. I'm your host, Sarah Robertson Barnes, a soccer mom with a station wagon and a passion for sustainable living. Each week, I'll bring you practical tips and honest conversations to help you waste less, save money, and make small, doable shifts that actually fit your real life. Because sustainable living doesn't have to be perfect to matter, and you don't have to do it all to make a difference. Hello, and welcome back to Sustainable in the Suburbs, the podcast where we start where we are, use what we have, and live a little greener, one small shift at a time. My name is Sarah, and I'm glad to be spending some time with you today. And if this podcast has become a part of your week, I would be so grateful if you follow the show and leave a rating wherever you are listening today. And if we're not already connected on Instagram, you can find me at Sarah Robertson Barnes. And you can also find links to the newsletter, the blog, and how to get in touch with me down in the show notes. Okay, so we talk a lot on this show about the everyday choices inside our homes, what we buy, what we reuse, how we cook, clean, live. But every so often, the conversation gets bigger. Sooner or later, most of us will face a decision about our physical living space, whether that's replacing flooring, updating the kitchen, finishing a basement, repainting, or renovating entirely. And those decisions carry a lot of weight. They involve materials, demolition sometimes, shipping, budgets, and choices that will shape how we live in our homes for years. And so while we do spend a lot of time talking about our small daily habits on this show, today we are zooming out. We're going to look at what happens when sustainability meets home renovation. We are surrounded by messaging that tells us to update, refresh, replace. Trends move quickly, shipping is fast, returns are easy. Entire rooms can be redesigned and shipped to you with a few clicks. But our homes are not meant to be fast fashion or disposable. They are meant to hold our lives and ideally to last. So today we're talking about what it actually looks like to approach design and renovations with sustainability in mind in a real and practical way. So what does sustainable design mean inside of an actual renovation project? Where does most of the waste really come from and what can we do about it? How do we choose materials that will age well instead of feeling dated in 5 years? And of course, how does your budget fit into all of this? My guest today is Brittany Steptoe Wright, the founder and principal of BSW Design and the COO of Steptoe Carpentry. With over 15 years in the construction industry and nearly a decade in professional design, Britt has built her career around quality craftsmanship, well-executed design, and creating what she calls legacy homes, spaces that are meant to stand the test of time, both in style and in substance. What I appreciate most about her approach is that sustainability is not an add-on. It's woven into how she thinks about sourcing, materials, antiques, refurbishing what you already have, the long-term life of your home, and of course, your budget. She brings in this really beautiful balance of practicality and aesthetics and how our homes should be built to be actually lived in. So if you've ever thought about updating your home or you're in the middle of it right now, I think this one will give you a bit of a different lens. Here's my conversation with Britt. Hello, Britt. Welcome to the show. I am really glad that we are finally sitting down to have this conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So for listeners who may not know you yet, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your background?
Yes. So I am an interior designer in the Aurora, Newmarket, King City area. I own a design build firm. So we do everything from the initial conception of the project right through the entire build, right down to the last vase of flowers placed at the end of the project. We are focused on consciously curated interiors and legacy builds, which means that we are thinking through the longevity of a project and trying to create homes that are going to be the space that you're able to pass down to future generations. So longevity, sustainability in mind with everything we do, as much as that's possible with a renovation or a new build. And we try to just make every place that we enter a better place for the family that lives there.
Mm-hmm. And I know that we've talked about this before when I was on your podcast, but we ended up going to the same university.
We did.
Sort of same-ish vibe. So can you tell me about your background in sustainability?
Yes. So I initially kicked off my university education wanting to be a museum curator. So I wanted to chase mummies around the world. But
Same.
I realized that was maybe not a job that many people got. So I thought maybe I should do something that's a little more approachable. So I ended up actually going to university for art history and English, and then changing into international development and environmental science, which at the time was how you kind of got your sustainability degree. A few years after, I think when I was in fourth year, they actually introduced a sustainability degree. But my degree is from Dalhousie University with international development as my major and environmental science as my minor.
Nice. We've had Chelsea from Hive to Home on the show before, and she actually did go to Dal for that sustainability project.
Cool.
So small world.
Yeah.
What did sustainability mean to you early in your design career?
It's always been something that's important to me just because I've been conscious of waste my entire life, and I really try to mitigate that in every area of my life. So for me, knowing that renovations and home building and construction are never going to cease to exist, I figured there may as well be just one more person in the realm that's going to try and do it a little bit better, a little bit cleaner, a little bit greener.
Mm-hmm. And so working in construction then has really shaped the way that you think about durability in our homes.
Yeah, and I started my career initially began after university. I started in the solar sector. So I worked in renewable energy for 7 years prior to changing careers. So I had a really good understanding of the infrastructure in Ontario, specifically around renewable energy and the way that the government was approaching those programs and implementing them, and the types of people that were adopting them, a lot of them for the wrong reasons, or just maybe not the wrong reasons per se, but not the right reasons, or not the reasons that you'd think somebody would adopt green energy.
Sure. Yeah.
So that was really eye-opening. It taught me a lot about electrical systems. It taught me a lot about the way the government handles new innovation, the way our infrastructure in Canada is just not set up for green energy. So the reason I actually chose to leave that, I've always wanted, on a separate kind of personal note, my father's a contractor. I've always loved design. I've always loved home building. I used to kind of play in his home software and sketch houses and things as a kid. So that's always been something I loved. But what made me kind of switch gears and change into that role was I simply didn't see the green economy being something that was going to be profitable within my career timeline. And I really wanted to be able to do something that made me feel fulfilled. And I didn't think that path was really, it was kind of crashing and burning when I left the industry.
So we're just pivoting into sort of kind of doing a similar thing.
Yeah.
Ish. Yeah. It's one thing to talk about, quote, sustainability in theory, and it's another to apply it inside of a renovation where there's budgets and timelines and trades and supply chains and your client expectations. So I'd love to talk about what that actually looks like in practice.
Yes.
When you say sustainable design, what does that actually change inside a renovation project, whether it's, planning or materials or sequencing?
I think the first thing that is important to address is just what sustainability means with the client. So sustainability can mean a few different things. It can mean that the end goal is to reduce waste on the project. It can mean that the end goal is to reduce the carbon footprint on the project. It can mean that the end goal is to increase the longevity of the project. So there's a few different ways to approach sustainability, and it's not always the same, and we're not always using the same pillars or avenues to get to that end goal. One thing you mentioned was budgets, and that's a huge one because, as we know, inexpensive materials are typically more cheaply made. They have larger carbon footprints. They come from further away. They have more chemicals in them. All of the things that contribute negatively to sustainability actually mean less investment. So the client really has to understand and want to approach sustainability in their renovation. Of course, we do as much of it as we can in-house, kind of behind the scenes. But until the client, if you show them, for example, 2 different types of hardwood, one that is produced in Europe with FSC standards and, sustainable harvesting practices and low off-gassing manufacturing processes. And then you look at one that's made in China that doesn't have any of those things. And one is $10 a square foot and one is $5 a square foot. Oftentimes, if the client's not either educated on sustainability or really is just looking for the least expensive to meet their budget, they're going to go with option B, which sucks.
Real though,
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I keep saying all the time on this show is you kind of got to do the best you can with what your budget and circumstances are and all of that. And how do you bring these early conversations into your client discussions?
I think one thing I do, and maybe I don't know if it's the right thing to do, but I kind of hold myself to a certain standard as a designer, which means I don't even necessarily present those lower level options if I know that I've quoted or estimated the job to a certain level. So I may be more expensive than the next contractor, but the materials and quality that I'm putting into a project are going to be higher level. So for example, the only brand of countertops that I carry that are man-made are made in Canada, 90% recycled water. They are made in London, Ontario, so the shipping is very, very close. Nothing's coming overseas. They recycle, a ton of their, all of the extra bits and pieces they recycle. So very, very clean. And that's the only brand that I spec. So if you're using me as a designer, you're really not even seeing anything that's not that brand.
That's interesting because the term zero waste does come from industry.
Yes.
Not just putting your trash in a mason jar, but actually through the industrial processes. So that's really interesting. I didn't know that about engineered countertops.
Yes.
And then, so how do you balance that with what's workable in a real timeline and with a real budget?
So one way I like to, if a client is more budget focused and wants to, stay on track, what we'll do is we'll find more creative ways to approach the project. So we did one last year that was really interesting. The client came to us and said, this is kind of a 5-year tide over for us for our kitchen. And we would really like to be able to have it be beautiful, but we don't want to create a ton of waste. And we don't, we really just kind of want to refinish it. And that was really exciting for me because what ended up happening is we created this brand new, quote unquote, beautiful kitchen. But we actually reused all of their kitchen cabinets that they already had. We reused countertops that I'd actually salvaged from a client who just was sick of their countertops in a pretty new house. And they were beautiful, real quartzite, and they wanted to change over to a more durable man-made product. So I actually just paid a little bit extra to have that removed safely because a lot of times when you remove countertops, they break. But I had it kind of, done in a slower way so that they wouldn't. And we were able to refabricate those stone surfaces in this kitchen. So these people had the existing cabinetry just with new doors, and then this refabricated stone that had come out of another house and was fully reused. And I ended up even having enough of that material left over to do 2 vanities here at my cottage where I'm sitting right now. So it was great. And that none of that went to the landfill. And this customer got this stunning new kitchen. When we were done, they went, "Oh, you know what? I don't think this is a 5-year thing. I think we're going to probably keep this kitchen for 20 years. And it was because we were able to do that, but they didn't pay for new cabinets. We didn't throw any cabinets in the trash. We were able to, salvage quite a bit of that. So that was really a fun one for us.
So not everything has to be a gut.
No.
That's amazing. And you got 2 extra. If you could see my face, like I know this isn't an audio format, but the whole time I'm just like, oh my God, I love this kind of reuse. That's phenomenal. And something that, like, I hate my kitchen countertops. It is what it is. And I didn't know you could do that. So idea planted. Yeah.
Yes. There's also, like, if you, just on the topic of countertops, like, if you ever have a smaller project and you want like real stone or even an offcut, there's so much of that you can go to like a stone yard, and they always have a ton of offcuts in the back. And oftentimes those sit there for years, and you can get them for extremely inexpensive amounts of money. And they are great for like a small vanity, entryway table, coffee table top, like all of those types of things.
That's a hot tip. I know we have lots of those places around us here in York Region. So
yes.
Interesting. As you know, we're having a bathroom issue, so I'm gonna, which we still have not dealt with. So I'm gonna file that away. Yeah. So like, as we were just talking about, renovations can be very wasteful by nature. Like either walls are coming down or materials have to come out. There's always a dumpster involved.
Mm-hmm.
And from the outside, like it just feels like it's all going in the dumpster. But I know that you are very intentional about waste management in your projects. So I'd love to dig into that a little bit now. When you are removing materials from out, so you mentioned like cabinets, flooring, drywall, fixtures, where do they go?
So anything that can be salvaged to be reused, typically we will utilize that. And again, the client pays us more to safely remove the cabinetry. But a lot of times our clients are able to sell that kitchen on Facebook Marketplace. They're able to, oftentimes we'll give it to Habitat for Humanity for a tax receipt. We've done that a few times. Sometimes the client gets like $3,000 for their kitchen that's coming out, and it doesn't go to waste. Somebody buys it to put up in their garage or in a basement apartment. So we try to educate the client on what those resources are prior to demolition, to say, this is a decent enough kitchen, you can salvage this. A lot of times, of course, they're not, and they do end up in the bin. But we do try to utilize companies that sort through the waste as well. So that means that they actually take what's gone into the bin and it goes to a facility where it's sorted into, wood, brick, concrete, and drywall, and able to kind of separate and go through a recycling process. There's only a couple of those plants in Ontario, so that's another kind of challenge that exists. But it's great in terms of the demolition process because we don't have to separate it on our end, which obviously is a massive undertaking and sometimes just not possible with the amount of space. You'd have to have 3 separate bins. You can't fit 3 separate bins in a standard suburban driveway. So the company we use for that is called Sustainable Waste. So they just drop a bin, and then when they take that bin away, they actually take it to those facilities where the garbage is separated into those categories. Also, what we do kind of internally, just in general, is we will take away anything that it's more of a hazardous waste material. So any leftover paint, if the customer doesn't want to keep it, anything of that nature, like old chemicals or things like that. And we will set those aside, and we kind of do a run to the hazardous waste local facility every couple months with that sort of thing as well. And then another kind of angle to that is when educating the client about what may be able to be sold or reused, we also look at what they have that's existing. So for example, if they have, real hardwood floors that can be sanded down, we'll often go that route versus ripping out and replacing. So trying to just eliminate waste at the source is probably the first thing. If we can't eliminate the waste at the source, then we will try to divert the waste. And if we can't divert the waste, then we'll try to responsibly dispose of it.
Love. I'm nodding along like, yes, I love sorting garbage.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. I'd love to visit one of those sorting facilities.
I would too, actually. Like, I would totally go with you if you want to.
Yes.
Do
okay.
Little
it's a date.
Trip.
Yes. So what determines whether something can be realistically reused in a home?
A great question. And I love that question because this is where it comes down to quality. And this is what I try to educate people on when they're buying new. because when you're buying new, that item has a life cycle, and eventually that item is going to need to be refinished, reupholstered, whatever that might be. Right now, I'm sitting at a table that's from the 1700s that was imported from England. This table has been through it. Like, maybe someone had surgery on this table.
Oh,
do you know what I mean? Like,
I do. Yes.
This thing is, but it's a beast, and it is stunning, and I love every crack in it, and I love everything about it. And if, this is more expensive than a dining table from IKEA or Urban Barn, but I will love this table my whole life. And this table has been loved for literal centuries, and probably, hopefully, will be loved for centuries to come. So when it comes to selecting those items for clients, I try to approach it from that standpoint. And whether it's a table that's already old or whether you're buying new, if you're buying new, then let's buy from a local artisan whose table is maybe $1,000 more than the table you're going to buy at a big box store, but it's hand finished and it's solid wood. And in 10 years, when your littles have scratched it up or put cups on it or whatever has happened in your home, that table can be sanded down and refinished because it is real wood. Anything that is not made of real wood cannot be refinished. So once it's done, and then it goes to a landfill. One thing I've struggled with over the years is vegan design, because I am a certified vegan designer. I myself am not vegan. I don't eat anything with 4 legs. That's kind of my thing. But vegan design was important to me because if we can avoid animal products, then I like to. However, vegan design actually competes with sustainability on some levels because it does require more use of plastics and, vinyl products, which then don't age and then go to a landfill. So that's always been a bit of a challenge in my mind as to, do you buy the real leather couch, which will age beautifully and can be refinished or can be oiled and kept for a long time, or do you buy the vegan certified couch that is going to, last you 10 years maybe, and then is going to end up in a landfill? So that sort of thing. And again, back to your question, kind of what can be salvaged. So quality can be salvaged. Cheap cannot. So quality in terms of, they used to give you real hardwood floors. You'd get 3/4 to an inch thick of real wood on your floor. Now everything's engineered hardwood, meaning it has one sand in it. So if you put an engineered hardwood in your home, you can refinish it one time, because the amount of real wood that sits on top of the engineered layer is only thick enough to be sanded down one time in its life. So that can only happen once, and then maybe the engineered hardwood lasts 20 years, you resand it, it lasts another 10, 20 years. So that product only has a 40-year lifespan, unless you keep it and it's beat up. But 40 years looking decent. Whereas real hardwood, you can sand down probably about 5 or 6 times in its lifetime, maybe more, depending how thick it is. So when you're choosing new products to put in your home, those are the types of conversations we're having around that. So choosing those products from the beginning, and then knowing what those products are that already exist in your home. So if you have real hardwood floors, understanding what that means, even if you don't love the thickness, even if you don't love the color they are now, okay, well, we can change that. So those are the types of things we focus on when we're planning.
This gives a lot more meaning to buy it for life, but it's buy it for lifetimes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. That's one thing that you've said before. I've gone to a talk that you've done about sustainable design. But what's really stuck with me, what you said, is the idea of designing for decades. And that really, it shifts the whole conversation about renovation entirely. That's when sustainability stops being about swap your toothbrush, and starts being about real longevity, about what holds up and ages well, and what you can continue to live in. So when you are designing a renovation or a project with this decades-long lens, what changes?
So the initial thing that we need to, the first change we need to make, or the first item we need to address, is whether the client is on board with that decades-long design. And sometimes the budget just isn't in alignment with that vision, and that's okay. That happens. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that every project we do is a sustainable, perfect scenario. With that lens, we have to always provide the value behind what your money's getting. Because a lot of times the decision that comes into play when you are looking at that investment is kind of taking those, doing the math, honestly. So if this sofa is going to last you, 10 years, and then you're able to reupholster it because it's handmade and it's made in Canada and it's, custom everything, and then you can reupholster it, have it for another 10 years. Okay, so that sofa maybe is going to cost you $20,000 today, but you're going to keep it for 10 years, and then you're going to reupholster it for $3,500, and then you're going to be able to keep it another 10 years. So for 20 years of one piece of furniture, you're in at $23,500. If you buy a sofa from StrucTube, you're spending $1,500, but you probably are going to need to replace that sofa, if you're lucky, in 5 years. Like by the time it's 5 years old, it's pilling, it's stained.
Especially if you have kids that use it as a trampoline. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not holding up because it's not built to hold up. It's built to be fashionable and quick and, be replaced because it's trendy. So if you're spending $1,500 every 5 years, you're still in for less money on the paper, but how much have you put into the landfill? How much time have you wasted getting another sofa? How much have you sat on an uncomfortable thing that you hate for, we kind of look at all of the different levels of value beyond money. Mm-hmm. And some furniture, like I'm already on the topic of sofas, but some furniture lasts much longer than 20 years, and people hand it down to their children and they get it restuffed and reupholstered, and they literally just love it so much that it stays in the family. So it's finding pieces like that you really can see lasting that long, that have great shape, that have great structure, that are more quote unquote timeless in their appearance. That's kind of where we try to trend towards in what we're choosing.
You're talking about sofas, and I'm just thinking about the 2 armchairs in my front room. My parents got out of the trash in 1985 or something like that. They're from the 70s. They used to have that brown nubbly stuff on it. They've been recovered twice. I still have them. I'm 46 now, so we've had them since I was a kid, and we're getting them refinished again.
Yeah.
Because they're perfect. I think one of them just needs a new cushion, and that's it. But it's because they were well made at the time.
Yes.
That now they're probably older than me. So, and they're great. I love them. Those I would be passing on to my kids when they move out eventually.
Yeah. I found 2 beautiful little coffee chairs at the end of someone's driveway in my old neighborhood when I first moved into our first house. So this was, 13, 14 years ago. And they were this chartreuse screen, and they were beautiful, but they had a few cigarette burns in them. But I kept them that way for a long time, and I just had them recovered maybe 2 years ago. And now they sit in 2 rooms in my house. But I will keep those chairs forever. And they literally were garbage. Somebody had them on the side of the road. Mm. But they were made beautifully. They're stunning. And you can't buy from kind of your main sources those types of things anymore. There are still really well-made pieces of furniture, but you do have to, and this is where designers kind of are a key player, is you do have to utilize those sources that the designer really only has access to. A lot of times those are trade-only sources. Those are custom furniture makers that only work with designers. Those types of things where you have to kind of go down that channel to achieve that result. And it can be fully customized to you. So it can be the exact shape, firmness, everything that you want, that's going to be something you want to sit on for the next 40 years.
Le Curb is my favorite store. But barring that,
I love Le Curb.
Le Curb, I love it. It's funny though, because we've been looking at, we need to get a sectional situation just for this weird, I have an 80s suburban house. And it is it's a bit of sticker shock, but then we're thinking there's how many of us, and we're going to sit in here every single night and read and this sort of thing. So it's also about how we want to live in our home and just balancing all of those different values, the sustainability and the budget and what my actual life looks like.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the other thing to consider too, not so much on the quote unquote sustainability side, but more on just the healthy living side, because a lot of times those two things go hand in hand, mm-hmm. is the higher cost to that product typically means better quality, typically means healthier, typically means it maybe has a Green Guard certification. It's not going to off gas. Typically means, the glue in it is not toxic. It's able, and a lot of times that also means that when that item actually does reach the end of its life and does have to go into a landfill, it breaks down better than items that are made cheaply and with toxic materials. So that's another thing to consider too. If you are buying something that maybe, will have an end of life, it's important to think about what that actual material is. Is it organic? Is it an organic cotton drapery? Is it, what's in there that's going to end up in the landfill, and what is the lifetime of that? Like, what's the cradle to grave of that product?
Mm-hmm. That's something I've been thinking about a lot lately with just donation dumps. Is that's not the final stop for that product.
Yeah.
Whether it's like a mug or your clothing or whatever, it does have life beyond it. And it can be really debilitating to think about that for everything. But when it comes to these huge purchases, that's the place to put that kind of care and consideration.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. So
one thing I love about your approach, we were just talking about the green chairs, which I remember seeing that post. I can see it so clearly, but
yes.
It is that impulse to not replace everything. So when you came to my house to look at our bathroom disaster, I showed you that gigantic antique sideboard that we have that belonged to my great grandmother. And you kind of immediately designed my future kitchen around it. Oh, this could be part of it. And that feels like it's such a different mindset to just gut it and put in all new shiny white. So yeah. How do you decide when you walk into someone's house, how do you decide this is worth keeping and this has to go?
This is where I'm going to get a little woo-woo on you, but I really feel that anything that is made by a person with intention has a certain energy signature to it. Mm-hmm. Anything that is made in a factory or somewhere with unethical business practices also has an energy signature to it. So to me, antiques, because that sideboard in your home probably took a year to make. That probably was treated with so much time and handcraft and love and intention. Right now I'm sitting on chairs that I imported from France. They were expensive. They're beautiful. But they have this hand-woven reed seat. Each seat would have taken somebody 3 weeks to weave. Mm-hmm. And the actual love that goes into that is palpable. And I find that, old items usually have that. Sometimes they're creepy. Got a mirror downstairs that might be haunted. We don't know. But, but that's kind of where that energy comes in. And something you buy, that's mass produced from a factory, maybe, has underpaid workers or things like that happening. The vibe of that stuff is just off and it just doesn't fit. So that's kind of where my woo-woo intuition comes in, is when I go into a house, I do feel those energy signatures from those items. And I go, oh God, you were loved or you were created. And that's kind of how I see what they should be and where they should go immediately.
This is how I feel about secondhand everything. Yeah. I may not know the provenance of an item, but I know that it has a story that I may never know, or a story that I do know, like that, again, with that sideboard. I used to be terrified to walk past it in my grandmother's house because it was covered with china.
Right.
And now mine is covered. It's where I keep my yarn and I have plants on it and that sort of thing. And so the story just continues.
Yes.
But it's part of my lived heritage, and that feels really, yeah, it's woo, it's fine. I feel, yeah. And it makes me think of her, and that's, what our homes should be.
Yeah. And I think going back to kind of that quality comment is the pieces that I've collected over time that mean the most to me are either extremely old, extremely loved, or extremely well made. So whether that is a secondhand pair of, designer shoes that I've purchased, they were made well, and I will always keep them and repair them versus throw them away because they're an expensive item that was made well. versus if I went to, I don't know, order something online and it comes and it's a $20 shoe. It's like, well, when that's broken, I'm going to throw it away.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, to spend a little bit more to get something that's going to live longer and have a longer lifespan. Like, everything that I cherish really is old or reclaimed or extremely well made.
It's how we value materials is going to influence how we treat those materials and then how we ultimately discard those materials.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For someone who wants to start incorporating, whether it's antiques or just refurbished into their home, where's a place they can realistically start with that?
I mean, I find a lot of really great treasures at Value Village. Like, anything, I love like a really good silver tray. So if you want to do a silver tray, like a bar cart type of tray, whether it's in your kitchen to like stack some spices on, you use it as a centerpiece on your dining room table. Places like Value Village typically will have a section and you can grab one of those for like $15 or something like that. Candle holders are another one. Like, there's stunning, like, either wood or crystal candle holders you can get at those types of places. There's also some amazing, this table, for example, that we talked about. This is from Farrier Home, which is a store run by a good friend of mine, Rosie, in Barrie, that you can go to. She imports British antiques. So she's an expat, and she goes home and she goes to antique markets all over England and brings over those items. And she just has a beautiful eye, and everything she brings is absolutely stunning. So if you're looking for a larger piece, she's a great resource to go to as well. And Etsy, I love. Like, Etsy's got a ton of vintage stuff. So a lot of times when I'm sourcing for clients, I'll use Etsy for, we use it a lot for hardware. So if you can kind of see my kitchen behind me here. Mm-hmm. So this hardware is all unlacquered brass. So that's another really great material that I love. Unlacquered brass is actually the most antimicrobial material that you can have in your kitchen. And as it's because of the oxidization process, it actually like eats bacteria as it oxidizes. So you get a beautiful patina and a really lovely like aged look on your hardware, which makes it look like rich and beautiful, but it also is like a healthy choice for your kitchen too. And that's handmade in England, and we order from them all the time. They make really beautiful hardware and very inexpensive compared to things you'd buy from like CB2 or Rejuvenation or things like that. So finding kind of those smaller makers who are doing the Lord's work. And there's another company I mentioned, like, if you're not looking for an antique table, but maybe you're looking for handmade local furniture, there is a great company out of Tottenham that does beautiful dining room tables at a very reasonable price. I believe they're called Rustic. I've got to look it up, but I'll let you know what it's called. But they do beautiful stuff. My home dining tables from them, and we've used them for a few client projects, and beautiful stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned tables earlier and scratches and possible surgeries and all that kind of thing. But I'm just thinking about how our kitchen table was my kitchen table growing up. And I remember my parents spent a fortune on it. There was a guy that used to make things on Main Street in Newmarket. And so it's an oak table. It's an orange oak table. I got to deal with that. But I can still see where, I spilled nail polish remover on it in high school, or where my brother glued his airplane to it. Those kinds of things. Or like where my youngest, clearly you can tell where he sits because of all the dings out of the table. And like, you can't purchase that.
No.
Really. So
you can't purchase the memories that come with that piece. And honestly, like, they tell a story, and it creates a layer to your home that new items just can't achieve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's, loved things last. And that's, So, but at some point, like, new materials do have to enter the picture in a renovation. Yeah. So from the outside, that can feel really overwhelming. Like, I don't know what I'm looking at. So there's like certifications and labels and sourcing claims and like greenwashing and all of that. So I'd love to understand how you make those decisions as a professional, not as a consumer, which is how I would look at it. So we have talked about flooring. And can you get into that a little bit more? Like, what FSC means as a baseline and how you evaluate that?
Yeah. So typically my first my first kind of stop on the list is where it's made, because a lot of certifications are country specific. So anywhere that has higher levels of environmental stewardship is obviously going to have higher levels of, manufacturing protocol and, government regulations around what you're actually able to like put out into the water system and put out of your chimney and things like that. So I typically try to keep sourcing as local as possible. So anything that I can get my hands on that's Canadian made is huge. Europe has extremely good environmental regulations. So anything European made is often very, very good as well. Of course, then you do add on the shipment of that overseas. But in terms of that shipment versus shipments from Asia, you're at a quarter of the distance and the carbon footprint of that shipment. So FSC is it's Forestry Stewardship Council, I believe, but I want to look it up so I don't sound like an idiot.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Forest Stewardship Council. So that just means that the actual raw material that's going into that product has a regulation around how it is harvested. So it just means that everything going into it is going to be higher. They're not going to be doing deforestation to create this flooring. They're going to be selectively cutting down trees, replanting, those types of things in order to make sure that that's a continuously renewable resource. Other things we look at too is VOCs, so paint and any type of kind of chemical that might go into the home does release volatile organic chemicals. So those can harm health, they can harm the atmosphere. So reducing anything that we can that has low or no VOCs is obviously a better option. And then understanding the manufacturing processes too. So, and that's human health as well. So things like they just banned certain countertops in Australia because of the silica, because cutting them causes cancer. So, So
Okay.
things like that, and knowing that even just the installation companies, like knowing that they're doing the fabrication in a way that's safe for the people using those products and things like that. Like we're looking at multiple levels. Really the main pillars of it are where it comes from. What are the raw materials going into it? How is it produced? How is it shipped? And how is it fabricated and installed are kind of the big pillars of what we look at when we're, judging a product for its ability to kind of meet our expectations.
That's interesting. I think people don't think about who's actually producing the materials the way that we do, like who sews our clothes and who picks our food, but we are not thinking about folks who are cutting countertops or working with stone or any of those kinds of things. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Silica will be the next asbestos. I can guarantee it.
Wow.
Yes.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. It'll be the next thing that is going to kill like the generation that's working on it. I would say like the people that are closer to retirement now are going to be the ones that end up with like, lung damage and cancers from silica. So that can be and it's highly like noticed in the construction industry now, like anytime you're mixing concrete, anytime you're cutting something like a countertop or like concrete, if you're cutting it, you need to be using a water saw to reduce and like wearing a mask to reduce the silica dust because they're starting to prove that it's causing cancers and things like that. So similar to how people used to think asbestos was like the magic material. Right. And then, of course, a bunch of people died from asbestosis, I think it's called. Then it's the same. It's going to be the same with silica. And and there'll be another thing that comes along. Like I think spray foam in houses is going to cause a huge issue down the road. Not only for the chemical, but just it's going to make renovating that much harder because you literally can't move anything that's encapsulated in spray foam.
Wow, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I just learned so many things in the last 3 minutes, things that we don't really think about what's behind our walls. So.
Well, the way we do things now on the construction side, we build things so well. And whenever you think, oh, you build things well, that's great. But they're built in a way that makes it almost impossible to take them apart. So if I was to gut your house right now, it hasn't been touched since it was built, or not all areas of it. So when I take off drywall, it's going to be fiberglass insulation. It's going to be something that can easily be removed. It's going to be plastic sheeting, or like my house is a 60s build, so it was tar paper, very easy to take out. And now we're using spray foam, which has its benefits in terms of like energy conservation. So a lot of like green homes or LEED certified will have that as a stipulation, because it is a vapor barrier and insulator at the same time. It's closed cell, so rodents and things can't get through it. But we're not at a point yet where we're starting to rip down those places that we've built using this. And you can't rerun a wire through it because it's hard like a rock once it's dry. So now when we're like, I think ahead to even my own home, which has spray foam insulation, if I ever wanted to renovate my home and move things, I would be literally, I don't even know how you get it out. Like you would have to carve it out of every
crowbar
cavity.
it out of
And then you've got this like cellulose insulation, and where does that go? And it's those types of things that I worry about, like in terms of the future of, how are we, even the way we stick tiles down now, I'm like, I don't know how that's ever coming up.
I can't talk about tiles, as you know, but but it's just interesting hearing these things, because I'm just looking around at like my 1985 popcorn ceiling house and feeling a little more content with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, let's just zoom out a little bit. And so we've talked about like construction and demolition and antiques and certifications and all of those moving parts that go into a home that's designed to last. But at the end of the day, we're just trying to make our homes like work better for our real lives. So if someone's thinking about their home now with these longer term lenses that you've described, what's one small shift they could make this month? So if you just want to make your home last a little longer, either like functionally or aesthetically, what's a small thing that we can change?
Do you want like a design tip, or like how to make something last longer?
Give me everything you got.
Okay. So one thing I love and I'm a big proponent of is refinishing. So a lot of refinishing companies now are using water-based paint. So that's really nice. It doesn't smell. It's quick. So they can come in and kind of sand down your whatever you want refinished. Most times it's a kitchen, and do that quite quickly. And it does make a big difference, and it changes the longevity. Oftentimes you can replace like the doors of the kitchen too, which is a really quick way to make it look new. And another easy fix or change that you can make is just on hardware too. Just changing out the hardware on a kitchen makes a big difference and changes the look to it. So those would be kind of the really like quick things that you can do that make a difference. Another thing I love and I think makes a big difference is window treatments. So if you don't have a window treatment yet, or you're looking for one that's maybe going to add a little bit of color or texture to the space, that's a really easy thing you can put up quickly that is going to make a difference and make the space feel warmer. And I love to like swap out pillows often to kind of suit the seasons and when I say suit the seasons, I don't mean like I'm getting Christmas pillows out and it's red and green. It's more like we're going to go with like warmer, richer tones in the autumn, and like maybe we're going to go with lighter, brighter tones in the spring and that sort of thing. So those are kind of the quick fixes. I also think lighting is a big one. So a lot of times people don't maybe realize that light has a color signature to it. So a lot of times you'll enter a home and you're like, oh, it's a lot. And it's because the lighting is too cold.
Yep.
So changing your lighting to like a 2700 K is what is kind of that warm, beautiful lighting, or adding like a dimmer switch to your lighting to create that layered lighting look really cozies up a home, and it's very easy to do. So that's another little tip. And then making things last longer. It's kind of your general home maintenance. So making sure you're re-siliconing your shower every couple of years. So you're scraping out the silicone and you're redoing it, because showers aren't like grout is not waterproof. So if your silicone is failing, then you do run the risk of water damage, which then has to be ripped out and replaced because you run the risk of mold. So things like that are really important in terms of the longevity of something. Wiping down the face of your cabinets, making sure you're not spilling water over the top and it's getting into the wood. Those types of things make a big difference. I like to do paint touch-ups every year in my house to keep it fresh looking. So you don't kind of run to the point where you're like, oh my God, I've got to, this is terrible. I'm going to rip it all out. It's like, no, like I go around with my little thing of putty and mud once a year and I patch the holes and I paint the patches and it feels fresh again. And you kind of are able to make that last a little longer. Maybe you go another year with your paint job and you don't have to buy another can of paint and those sorts of things. So those would kind of be, I think, my top recommendations of how to create that longevity and just caring for your home, making sure you're using the right cleaning products, you're using, you're not over chemical, like you're not using too many chemicals on your floors, things like that can change the finish is another little tip. I love the Norwex brand, which you can get on Amazon. You just use water. So I clean all my countertops, windows with just water and like their silver infused cloth. That's one of my favorite brands. And like I use a steam mop on all my floors. So I don't use any chemicals on my tiles that can eat away at the grout, stuff like that.
Just like nodding away. I'm making furious notes here for everyone for the show notes of all of these different tips because it really is just take care of your stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like clothing. Like, do you want your clothes to last? Well, don't wash them on high heat and put them in the dryer every time, which I'm guilty of for sure. Yeah. But as I buy nicer things, I read how I'm supposed to take care of them because they mean more to me because I've invested in them and they hold higher value.
Right.
So then I treat them better. So that's kind of another way to think of this whole quality thing that we're talking about is the more money or, even if you think about money as terms of like you've earned it, it took you time to earn it. So the more time you put into something, the more you're going to care about it and the better care you're going to take of it, which means it's going to last longer. So I think thinking of things less like dollars for value, there's so much more to it than that.
Yeah. How long do you want to keep your stuff?
Yeah.
Ideally, a really long time. Like, yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just to go completely woo-woo here, like that's really what our goal is for the planet too. Just take care of it because we do intend to keep living here.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has for walking us through all of this. And I really appreciate how thoughtfully you approach your work and how practical your approach is.
Oh, thank you. That's so sweet.
So where can people find you?
I'm mostly on Instagram at BSW Design. I do have a podcast as well. I haven't updated it in about a year, but there's some really solid content there. That is a business podcast for designers. So it helps anyone who's newer to the industry to understand how they can approach business, all the things they don't teach you in school, which is a lot. So that's a great place. That's the CEO podcast. It's on Apple, Audible, all the places that you listen to podcasts. And I also have a course related to business for design as well. So that's through my website, bswdesign.ca. There's a little area for designers, and that's a business course that teaches kind of more in depth of what the podcast dives into.
That's awesome. I'm going to link that for everybody in the show notes as well. Well, thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me.
If there's one thread that ran through that whole conversation for me, it's about longevity, choosing materials and caring for what we already have so that our home will still work for us years from now, and being thoughtful about what enters our homes in the first place. So for everything that we've talked about today, it is all in the show notes for you. And you can get more info on all of our episodes, blog posts, and weekly sustainable living tips by joining the newsletter, which you can sign up for at sustainableinthesuburbs.com/newsletter. I hope you have a great rest of the week. Until next time, start where you are, use what you have, and live a little greener. Thanks for tuning in to Sustainable in the Suburbs. Every small step adds up, and I'm so glad we're doing this together. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to follow the show, share it with a friend, and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. You can find me at sustainableinthesuburbs.com or at Sarah Robertson Barnes on all the things. Until next time, start where you are, use what you have, and live a little greener.
This podcast is produced, mixed, and edited by Cardinal Studio. For more information about how to start your own podcast, please visit www.cardinalstudio.co or email Mike at mike@cardinalstudio.co. You can also find the details in the show notes.